The night sky glowed red as flames devoured the house. Sirens were still far away, their faint cries swallowed by the crackle of burning wood. Inside, smoke thickened with every breath, curling around the rooms like a deadly snake. The Carter home, once a proud mansion with marble floors and shining chandeliers, was now a furnace. Every corner alive with fire. 7-year-old Maya Johnson, a small black girl with twisted legs that made walking difficult, sat trapped in her upstairs bedroom. Her curls clung to her damp forehead, her cheeks streaked with tears as she pressed her tiny palms against the window glass. The heat pressed against her skin, her lungs burned with every gasp, and terror filled her wide brown eyes. "Daddy," she screamed, her voice raw and desperate. "Daddy, don't leave me in the fire!" Down below, the front door burst open. Her father, clutching his new wife's hand, stumbled out into the night air with another child, Maya's stepbrother, cradled in his arms. The boy coughed weakly, but he was safe. Safe because he had been chosen. Safe because he mattered more. But Maya was left behind. The neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, horrified. "Where's the little girl?" one woman cried, clutching her chest. "Isn't she still inside?" Her father's face twisted into an ugly mask of false grief. "The smoke! It was too much! I couldn't reach her!" he shouted, his voice breaking in fake sobs. His wife clung to him, wailing dramatically, though her eyes glinted with something closer to annoyance than sorrow. Maya's scream tore through the night again, piercing the facade. "Daddy, please!" Every head turned upward. Through the thick smoke, a small figure could be seen pounding on the glass, her face streaked with ash and tears. The sight silenced the crowd. The father looked up briefly, then dropped his gaze, crocodile tears streaking his cheeks. "There's nothing we can do," he muttered. "It's too late." But not everyone believed him. Across the street, a tall man stood apart from the others, his sharp eyes fixed on the scene. Mr. Alexander Reed, a wealthy businessman who had lived next door for years, clenched his fists. He had always despised this family. The arrogance of the father, the cruelty of the stepmother, the way little Maya's laughter had grown quieter each year. And now, watching them abandon her in the flames, his disgust hardened into fury. The fire roared louder, embers leaping into the sky like sparks of accusation. Maya's voice cracked as she cried out again, her small body silhouetted against the flames consuming her room. "Daddy, don't leave me. I'm scared." Alexander's heart slammed against his ribs. He couldn't wait for the fire trucks crawling through traffic, their sirens still miles away. Every second was a countdown. Every scream was a knife. He tore off his jacket, tossing it to the ground. Gasps rose from the crowd as he sprinted toward the burning house. "Alexander, no!" someone shouted. "You'll be killed!" But he didn't stop. The front yard radiated heat like an open oven, the flames licking higher with each gust of wind. Smoke stung his eyes, but he pushed forward, shoving past the stunned father who reached out weakly as if to stop him. "Stay out of this!" the man barked, his mask of grief slipping into irritation. Alexander's glare cut through him like steel. "If you won't save your daughter," he growled, "then I will." Without another word, he plunged into the inferno. Inside, the heat was suffocating. Flames clawed at the walls, devouring curtains, swallowing photographs, leaving only blackened ash in their wake. Alexander pulled his shirt up over his mouth, forcing himself to breathe through the choking smoke. He charged up the staircase 2 steps at a time, the wood groaning beneath him. "Maya!" he shouted, his voice hoarse. "Where are you?" A faint cry answered through the roar of fire. "Here! Please! Help me!" He followed the sound, kicking open a half-burned door. There she was, Maya, crouched by the window, her small hands bloody from pounding against the glass. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Please don't leave me." "I won't," he swore, striding across the room. He scooped her into his arms, feeling her trembling body cling desperately to him. Her skin was hot, her curls damp with sweat, but she was alive. The ceiling above groaned, a beam cracking loudly as flames licked across it. Alexander turned toward the hallway, his jaw set. He had come for her, and he would not leave without her. But as he stepped back into the smoke-filled corridor, he saw something. Something that froze his blood even in the heat of the fire. A door left slightly ajar, inside a room the family never spoke of. And through the gap, he glimpsed boxes stacked high. Boxes filled with papers, money, and things that looked nothing like a child's belongings. The family's secret, hidden in the flames. The smoke was a living thing, clawing down the hallway, filling Alexander's lungs with fire. His eyes watered, every breath burned, but his grip on Maya only tightened. She clung to his neck with the desperate strength of a child who knew she was one scream away from being forgotten forever. "I've got you," he whispered hoarsely, forcing strength into his voice even as the house groaned around them. "I won't let go." The corridor seemed endless, flames leaping across the ceiling like wild animals. Each step was a battle. The wooden floor cracked and splintered under his boots, threatening to give way. But Alexander pushed forward, shielding Maya with his own body as embers rained down like burning hail. Then, another sound. A hollow crash. The half-open door he had glimpsed earlier, the one with boxes stacked inside, collapsed inward as a beam fell across it. For just a second, through the smoke and fire, Alexander saw what the boxes contained. Stacks of envelopes, rolls of cash, ledgers with names scrawled across them, and photographs of unfamiliar faces. It wasn't just clutter. It was evidence. Evidence of something rotten, something that explained the polished lies this family had always lived behind. Maya whimpered, burying her face in his shoulder. "Please don't stop. Please don't let the fire get me." Alexander turned his eyes from the room, forcing himself forward. "Hold on to me, little one. We're almost there." He barreled down the staircase, coughing violently as smoke enveloped them. His vision blurred, but he followed the faint glow of the front door. Freedom, oxygen, life. Outside, the crowd had grown larger. Neighbors stood in shock, watching the mansion burn. The father, still putting on his mask of grief, wailed loudly. "My baby, my poor baby girl is gone." His wife clutched his sleeve, sobbing crocodile tears into his shoulder. But then, another sound. A crash, as the front door burst open again. Alexander staggered into the night air, his clothes blackened, his skin streaked with soot. In his arms, Maya clung desperately, coughing but alive. Her wide eyes blinked against the flood of fresh air, her small chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. The crowd erupted in gasps and cries. "She's alive! He saved her! Dear God, she's still breathing!" Alexander dropped to one knee on the lawn, holding Maya tightly as she coughed into his chest. "You're safe," he told her firmly, his voice trembling despite himself. "You're safe now." Maya lifted her head, her tear-streaked face turned upward. For the first time, her eyes were not filled with despair, but with fragile relief. "You came for me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Daddy didn't, but you did." Those words cut through the night sharper than the crackle of flames. The crowd turned as one toward the father, who froze under their accusing stares. His sobs faltered, his face paling, as murmurs rippled through the neighbors. He said she was gone. He didn't even try to go back for her. Why would a stranger save her, but not her own father? The mask began to crumble. The truth was spilling out, not through confessions, but through the undeniable evidence of action. Maya clung tighter to Alexander, her tiny fingers gripping his shirt. "Don't let them take me back inside," she begged, her voice breaking. "You're safe with me," Alexander promised again, his voice low but firm. The fire trucks finally arrived, sirens blaring, water hoses uncoiling. But the real blaze was no longer inside the mansion. It was in the eyes of every neighbor, every witness, as they watched the family who had abandoned their daughter stand exposed in the glow of the flames. And Alexander knew deep down that the secret glimpsed inside that burning room would one day explain everything. For now, though, all that mattered was the trembling child in his arms, alive because he had chosen courage, where her parents had chosen cowardice. The flames finally began to shrink under the steady assault of the fire hoses. Clouds of steam rose into the night sky, mixing with smoke until the mansion seemed to dissolve into mist. The roar of the fire softened into the hiss of water, but the fury in the crowd outside only grew louder. Maya lay wrapped in a blanket on the lawn, her small body trembling. The paramedics checked her breathing, her pulse, the burns on her arms. She clung to Alexander's hand the whole time, refusing to let go. Each time they tried to lift her onto the stretcher, she whimpered, "Don't take me from him. Please don't leave me again." Alexander stayed at her side, his soot-streaked face set in grim determination. "I'm not leaving you," he assured her. "Not now, not ever." Across the yard, her father stumbled through his web of lies. I couldn't reach her," he shouted, his voice breaking. "The flames were too strong. I tried. I swear I tried." His wife echoed him, wailing into the night. "He nearly died trying. He loved her so much." But the neighbors weren't convinced. Their eyes shifted toward Alexander, who still held Maya's hand. He had gone into the inferno with no hesitation, while the girl's own blood had stood outside, crying empty tears. "She's alive because of him, not you," one man muttered, shaking his head. Another woman added bitterly, "A stranger risked his life. Her father did nothing." The father's face hardened. He turned sharply toward Alexander. "You don't know what it was like in there," he spat, his false grief cracking into anger. "You had no right to go in." Alexander rose slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow across the lawn. His voice, low and steady, carried more weight than any scream. "No right? She was begging for her life. I heard her. We all did. And you stood here pretending to cry while she burned." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The father's mouth opened, but no words came. His eyes darted nervously as whispers spread, louder and louder. Maya tugged weakly at Alexander's hand, her voice trembling but clear. "He left me, Mr. Reed. I called for him, and he left me." The words struck like lightning. The crowd erupted, voices overlapping in shock and disgust. "He abandoned her. What kind of father does that? She would be dead if not for Alexander." Rebecca, the stepmother, hissed through clenched teeth, her voice sharp with panic. "Enough of this. You people don't understand. We had to save the baby. There was no time for her." But the defense only made things worse. Murmurs turned into shouts, the crowd recoiling at her cruelty. "No time for her? She's his daughter. Disabled or not, you don't leave a child in a fire." "Monsters!" The father's mask finally shattered, his face twisted with rage as he barked. "She slows us down, always has. Do you think I should have let my son die instead?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the firefighters paused, their hoses still hissing as the words hung in the air. Maya flinched, pressing closer to Alexander. Her wide eyes glistened with fresh tears, but this time not just from fear, from the final confirmation of what she had always known. Her father never wanted her. Alexander's jaw tightened. He had suspected cruelty. He had despised the man for years, but to hear him say it out loud, before witnesses, before the child herself, was worse than anything he had imagined. He stepped forward, his voice sharp as steel. "You've just confessed what you are. Not a father, not a man, nothing but a coward who abandoned his own blood." The crowd erupted in fury. Shouts filled the air. "Call the police. Child services must hear this. She can't stay with them." The father's face paled. Rebecca clutched his arm, her confidence draining. They had lost the crowd, lost the illusion, lost everything. And then Alexander, his voice steady, added one last blow. "And when the investigators search what's left of your house, they'll find the room I saw, the boxes, the cash, the records. You left more than your daughter behind in that fire. You left the truth." The father's eyes widened, his mouth falling open in horror. What did you see?" The whispers grew sharper. "Boxes? Records? Money?" For the first time all night, it was not the fire that burned hottest. It was the truth, now threatening to consume them. The night had fallen into chaos. Fire hoses hissed, neighbors shouted, and the once grand Carter mansion collapsed inward, beams falling with sickening cracks. But above the noise came a new sound, the screech of sirens drawing closer, followed by the flash of red and blue lights painting the smoke. 2 police cars pulled up against the curb. Officers rushed out, their radios crackling as they tried to control the panicked crowd. "Step back, please." Everyone stepped back. Morning light revealed what the fire had left behind. The once grand Carter mansion was now a blackened skeleton. Its walls cracked, its roof caved in, smoke still curling from the ruins. Fire investigators picked through the debris with careful hands, their flashlights cutting through ash and twisted beams. Among them were 2 officers, notebooks in hand. They weren't only looking for the cause of the blaze, they were looking for evidence. And they found it. In the corner of the 2nd floor, miraculously shielded by fallen beams, a small storage room had survived. The door was charred, but inside, many boxes were still intact. Firefighters hauled them out one by one, setting them on the lawn where officers pried them open in plain sight of the neighbors who had gathered again, unable to resist watching justice unfold. The first box revealed stacks of cash, some bundles half-burned, others untouched, the rubber bands still holding tight. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The second box revealed papers, lists of names, accounts, transactions, ledgers filled with figures, codes, and dates. The third box revealed photographs, men shaking hands in dimly lit rooms, women holding envelopes, even a picture of the Carter father standing beside strangers no one in the neighborhood recognized. The lead officer lifted one paper high, her brow furrowing. "These aren't just family belongings," she announced grimly. "This is evidence of fraud. And maybe worse." At the police station, Alexander sat in the waiting area with Maya curled up on a bench beside him. She leaned against his arm, her blanket still wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her small body trembled less now, though every loud sound still made her flinch. "Do I have to go back to him?" she whispered, not lifting her gaze. Alexander shook his head. "No. They know what he did. You're safe now." Her eyes flicked up to him, wide and searching. "But what if he lies again? He always lies." Alexander gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Sometimes lies can fool people for a while, but when the truth is burned into ashes for everyone to see, no lie can hide it." Meanwhile, in an interrogation room, Maya's father sat with his head in his hands. Rebecca sat beside him, her carefully painted face smeared with ash and mascara. Across the table, the lead officer slid a folder toward them. Inside were photographs of the recovered boxes. "Do you want to explain this?" she asked coolly. The father slammed a hand against the table. "That's nothing, just old business records. The fire destroyed half of it. You can't prove anything." Rebecca's lips tightened. She turned her face away, her silence louder than any denial. The officer's eyes narrowed. "You left your daughter inside to burn. We have witnesses. We have her own testimony. And now we have cash and records tied to suspicious accounts. This is more than neglect. This is criminal." He paled, sweat beading on his forehead. His bluster faltered. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice trembling. "It wasn't my idea. I told him the money was dangerous, but he wouldn't listen. He said Maya slowed us down, that no one would care if she didn't make it out." The father turned on her, his eyes blazing. "You witch! You were with me the whole time. You said the same thing." The officer raised a hand, her face unmoved. "Thank you. That's all we need for now." Back in the waiting room, Alexander looked up as the officer emerged. Her expression was grim but steady. "We'll be moving forward with charges, child endangerment, fraud. Likely more, once investigators finish with the documents." Maya's fingers tightened on his sleeve. She stared at the officer with wide, anxious eyes. "Does that mean I don't have to see them again?" The officer crouched, softening her tone. "It means you'll be placed somewhere safe. And because of what Mr. Reed did for you, we'll be considering him in that decision." Maya turned instantly, her face pressing into Alexander's chest, her small arms wrapping around him in relief. "Please let me stay with him," she whispered. "He didn't leave me. He saved me." Alexander swallowed hard, his throat tightening. He placed a hand gently on her back. "You don't have to beg for what you deserve, Maya. You deserve to be loved." By the time the sun dipped low again, news had spread beyond the neighborhood. Reporters gathered at the edge of the police line, their cameras flashing, their microphones raised. Headlines were already buzzing. "Millionaire neighbor saves child from blaze." Father faces fraud and child neglect charges. Little girl's cry shakes community. But for Maya, none of that mattered. She sat curled up on a bench with Alexander beside her, clutching the blanket and her new guardian's hand. For the first time in her 7 years, she let herself believe it might be true. She might never have to cry, "Don't leave me," again. Alexander still knelt beside Maya, shielding her small body with his arm. She clung to him, refusing to release her grip, even when paramedics tried again to lift her. "Don't let them take me back to him," she begged, her voice hoarse. "You're not going back," Alexander said firmly, his eyes locked on the officers as they approached. "Not while I'm here." The lead officer, a tall woman with dark hair pulled into a tight bun, crouched down to eye level. "Sir, we need to get her to the ambulance." "She's not safe with them," Alexander replied sharply, nodding toward the father and stepmother who hovered near the edge of the crowd, their faces pale and twisted. "She nearly died because they abandoned her, and I think you'll find there's more in that house than a fire." The officer's brow furrowed. "Explain." Alexander took a breath, the acrid smoke still clinging to his lungs. "There's a room upstairs. I saw boxes, cash, documents, something they didn't want anyone to find. The fire may not have been an accident." The words spread like sparks through the crowd, gasps, murmurs, the sharp intake of collective breath. The father stepped forward, his voice cracking. "He's lying. He's always hated us. He made it up to turn everyone against us." But the officer's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." She motioned to 2 firefighters. "When the fire is stable, check the 2nd floor. Look for anything intact." The weight of the crowd shifted again, eyes now burning into the father and Rebecca. Rebecca gripped his arm with trembling fingers. "We need to leave," she hissed under her breath. "We need to go now." "Leave? That would make us look guilty," he shot back, his voice a harsh whisper. But guilt was already written across his face. Maya stirred weakly against Alexander's chest. "Mr. Reed," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. Will I have to go home with them?" Her eyes flicked toward her father, and tears welled again. Alexander shook his head. "No, not tonight. You're safe." The officer straightened and addressed the crowd. "We'll be questioning everyone. For now, the child is coming with us for protection." The father's face blanched. "What? She's my daughter. You can't just take her away." Alexander rose to his full height, still holding Maya. His voice cut through the night, steady and cold. "You had your chance to be her father. You left her to die." The officer turned to him. "Sir, if you'd please bring her to the ambulance, we'll make sure she's evaluated and kept safe." For the first time, Maya allowed herself to loosen her grip. Not because she trusted the system, but because she trusted the man who carried her. She nodded softly, resting her head against his shoulder. "If you stay with me," she whispered. "I will," he promised. The paramedics secured her carefully in the ambulance, Alexander climbing in beside her. As the doors shut, the father's voice broke across the night like a desperate animal. "She's lying. She wanted this. She always hated me." But no one listened. The crowd had already judged him, and the police were watching now, their eyes cold and suspicious. The ambulance pulled away, siren wailing. Inside, Maya curled up against Alexander, her blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. For the first time in her short life, she felt something that had always been missing: safety. Alexander glanced down at her, his hand resting gently on hers. He thought of the room upstairs, the glimpse of cash and papers he had seen. There was more to this fire, more to this family's darkness. He had no proof yet, but the fire hadn't destroyed everything. And when the ashes cooled, the truth would come out. The courthouse was packed. Reporters filled the steps outside, their cameras flashing like lightning, microphones thrust forward to capture every word. The story of the little black girl abandoned in a burning house had spread across the city, stirring outrage in every corner. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low murmurs until the gavel struck. Silence fell. Maya sat at the front with Alexander by her side, her small hand clutched tightly in his. She wore a simple dress, her curls tied with a ribbon, but her wide eyes betrayed the storm of emotions inside her. Across the room sat her father and Rebecca. His face was pale, his once confident posture reduced to a slouch. Rebecca kept her gaze low, her hands ringing nervously in her lap. The prosecutor stood tall, addressing the jury. This case is not just about a fire. It is about betrayal. It is about a father who chose himself over his daughter. It is about a man who valued money and convenience more than the life of his own child. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The prosecutor held up a charred folder, its edges blackened by flame. These are the records retrieved from the hidden room. Cash, fraudulent accounts, evidence of crimes spanning years. And while this house of lies burned, he left his daughter, disabled, defenseless, screaming at the window for her life. All eyes turned toward Maya. For a moment, the little girl looked small, fragile under their gaze. But Alexander leaned close, whispering, "You're brave. Just tell them the truth." When her turn came, Maya's voice shook at first. She described the smoke, the heat, the way she pounded on the glass. "I called for him," she whispered. "I called for my daddy. I begged him not to leave me, but he ran away. He didn't look back." Tears streamed down her cheeks. The courtroom stirred, some jurors wiping their eyes. Then she added, her voice breaking but clear, "But Mr. Reed came. He saved me. He's the one who didn't leave." The father's face twisted with anger. He slammed a fist against the table. "She's lying. She's always been a burden. She slowed us down." The judge's gavel struck hard. "Order in the court!" But the damage was done. The jury had heard it, raw and unfiltered. A father admitting his disdain for his own child. Over the next hours, witnesses testified. Neighbors spoke of hearing Maya's cries, of seeing the father weep fake tears while Alexander risked his life. Firefighters confirmed the suspicious room and its contents. Even Rebecca, under pressure, broke her silence. "He said leaving her was for the best," she confessed, her voice trembling. "He said no one would blame us, that she would never survive long anyway." Gasps erupted. Maya buried her face against Alexander's arm, unable to hear more. He held her tightly, his jaw clenched with fury. When the verdict came, the courtroom held its breath. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty. On the charge of neglect, guilty. On the charges of fraud and financial crimes, guilty. The judge's voice rang clear. "This court sentences you to 25 years in prison without parole." Rebecca sobbed, begging for leniency, but the gavel struck again. It was final. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. "Justice for Maya!" voices cried. Reporters swarmed Alexander as he carried Maya down the steps, her small arms around his neck. "Mr. Reed, how did you find the courage? What will happen to the girl now? Do you intend to take custody?" Alexander paused at the bottom step. He looked down at the child in his arms, the girl who had been left to burn but had risen from the ashes stronger than anyone could imagine. "I didn't act out of courage," he said simply. "I acted because no child should ever have to scream for help and be ignored." Maya lifted her head, her soft voice carrying further than anyone expected. "He's my family now. He didn't leave me." The crowd fell silent, then broke into applause. That night, as the city buzzed with the news, Maya slept soundly for the first time in years. No nightmares, no fear, just the steady rhythm of Alexander's voice in her memory, promising again and again, "I won't leave you." And though the fire had taken her home, it had given her something greater: safety, justice, and the chance to finally dream of a future without fear. The weeks that followed the trial were unlike anything Maya had ever known. For the first time, mornings did not begin with fear. No more tiptoeing past closed doors. No more wondering if her existence was a burden. Instead, she awoke to sunlight streaming through curtains in Alexander's home, the smell of fresh coffee, and the sound of a man humming softly in the kitchen. Alexander had prepared a room just for her. Not the largest or most lavish room in his mansion, but one filled with warmth. Walls painted a soft lavender, shelves lined with books and toys, and a wide window that overlooked a garden he promised would one day be hers, to plant however she liked. When Maya first stepped inside, she froze, her eyes widening. All this for me? She whispered. Alexander knelt, smiling. For you, because you deserve it. She touched the quilt on the bed, tracing the patterns with trembling fingers. Then, without a word, she rushed into his arms. But healing did not happen overnight. The nightmares still came. Some nights, Maya woke screaming, her voice raw. Don't leave me in the fire! Alexander was always there, rushing in, holding her close until her sobs faded into hiccups. You're safe, he would whisper. It's over. I'm here. And slowly, with each night, the words began to sink into her heart. The nightmares came less often. The fear loosened its grip. One Sunday afternoon, Alexander took Maya back to the ruins of her old home. The house was nothing more than blackened rubble now, the scent of ash still lingering. She clutched his hand tightly, her small body stiff. Why did we come here? She asked. Because sometimes, he said gently, to heal, we have to face the place where the hurt began. Maya stared at the ruins, her lips pressed together. For a long moment she was silent. Then, slowly, she let go of Alexander's hand and walked forward. She stopped in front of the spot where her window had once been, the place she had pounded her fists against the glass, the place she had screamed for her father who never came. She knelt, picked up a small piece of scorched wood, and held it in her palm. This is where I thought I would die, she whispered. But I didn't. I lived. Because of you. Alexander swallowed hard, his throat tight. He bent beside her. Because of your courage. You fought to be heard. You fought to survive. I only gave you my hands, but you gave me your strength. Maya's eyes glistened. She let the charred wood fall and turned back toward him. For the first time, she didn't look at the ruins with fear. She looked at them with finality. Can we go now? Of course, he said softly, taking her hand again. As they walked away, she didn't look back. Months passed. Spring arrived. The garden at Alexander's house bloomed with roses, daisies, and tulips, flowers Maya had chosen herself. She loved tending them, her laughter echoing as she chased butterflies through the grass. Her legs still ached sometimes, her steps uneven, but Alexander was already arranging consultations with the best doctors. One evening, after a long day of planting, Maya and Alexander sat together on the porch. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in pinks and golds. She leaned against his side, her locket resting on her chest. Do you think Mommy can see me now? She asked quietly. Alexander placed an arm around her shoulders. I don't just think it, Maya. I know it, and I know she's proud of you. Maya closed her eyes, imagining her mother's smile. The warmth of arms she could barely remember but still felt in her heart. Then I'll keep making her proud, she whispered. The final piece of her healing came at a small community event, organized by the very charity that had once supported her family. They invited Maya to speak, not because she was a victim, but because she had survived. The hall was filled with people, neighbors, friends, children, and even strangers who had followed her story in the news. Maya stood on stage, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. Her voice wavered at first, but then grew stronger. My name is Maya Johnson, she began. Some of you know me as the girl from the fire. But I'm not just that. I'm also the girl who lived. I was left behind, but someone came for me. And now, I want you to know, if you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever felt like you don't matter, you do. You are not alone. The crowd erupted in applause, some people standing, tears streaming down their faces. Alexander watched from the front row, his chest swelling with pride. In that moment, he knew Maya was no longer just surviving. She was shining. That night, as they walked home under the stars, Maya slipped her hand into his. You'll never leave me, right? Alexander looked down at her, his eyes soft. Never. Not in fire, not in storm, not in anything. Maya smiled, the last traces of fear fading from her heart. Then I'm not scared anymore. And for the first time, the little black girl who had once screamed from a burning window stepped into her future without fear, wrapped in the unbreakable bond of love, justice, and hope. Because though betrayal had nearly ended her story, love had written a new one. And this time, it was a story without fire, only light.